Does the fear of not knowing where to start ever prevent you from starting a task in the first place? Go back around 12 months and this was me. I had told myself I was going to start my dissertation over the summer, but I didn't, and that was mainly because I was so clueless and I was so scared about making mistakes. I'd already had a meeting with my dissertation supervisor by this point, and that was definitely helpful in giving me some sort of clarity, but inevitably when all confines are taken away and you're left to direct a project that has endless possibilities, it can all feel a bit daunting. The process of producing a dissertation is comparable to being in a big city and having no way of navigating. You will arrive at your destination in the end, but along the way you will almost certainly need some degree of support and you'll probably turn down quite a few dead ends. But the only way that you're going to get to that goal is by taking those first steps. And it's those very first steps I want to help you with in this video. There are lots of things you can do to prepare for your project before you even pick up a book or visit an archive. I found mind maps super helpful during the first stages of my dissertation. Whether or not you're 100% confident on a topic that you want to research for your dissertation, I would first advise that you sit down and start mind mapping some potential primary sources that you could use. Your project will be based on primary and secondary material, but most dissertations will be primary source heavy. So ultimately, if you can't think of enough primary sources that you could analyse, then the whole topic may not be feasible. Consider that at undergrad level, you probably won't be given any funding to go and visit archives. So I would firstly recommend seeing what trusted resources are readily available online. And then secondly, what archives are local to you that you can either visit for free or for a small fee if you can afford this. And then once you've added on all of the potential primary sources you could use, have a brief research as to what secondary sources are available as well, because you're going to need the secondary sources for the contextual knowledge. Once you've either settled on a topic or you've shortlisted a few different topics, then have a meeting with your dissertation supervisor to go through your ideas. They may be able to better advise you as to what primary or archival sources are available to you and whether or not the scope of your project seems doable. And then when you've decided on a topic to research, try and dissect this into different chapters. I found that doing this early on prevented me from feeling really overwhelmed, and it also helped me to compile a targeted reading list. Unlike other modules you'll have taken, you're going to have to make your own reading list for the self-directed project. I used Notion to create my reading list and it was fantastic. I'll talk about that a bit later on, but for now I'm going to discuss what you actually need to be adding to your reading list. To begin with, I'd advise adding general readings to gain a contextual knowledge about your subject area. For example, I knew my broad subject area was going to be around Americanisation and British women in the post-war period. So to begin with, I started finding readings about Americanisation and readings about British women in the post-war period separately to gain the contextual knowledge about both aspects of my project. By this stage, I'd already started to think about my chapter structures, which concerned TV, film, and women's magazines. So my next step was to find readings that connected these media types to Americanisation and then how that affected British women. So in short, when you start a reading list, start really broad and general and then narrow in as you go along. To expand on my reading list as I went through my project, I scanned through the bibliography of every text I read, and if anything caught my eye, I then added it to the reading list. Often books and articles will be mentioned in the main body of a text as well, so make sure to look out for that. So as I mentioned, I found Notion to be really useful when I was making a reading list. I created two tables, one for books and one for articles, and in each table I included the following information. Firstly, a tick box to show completion, and then the author and the title of each book or article. I also then checked what form each reading was in because some books were only in physical form, whereas others were available online. If a book was only available in physical form and UEA Library stocked that book, I also made sure to write down the call number so I had that to hand if I ever needed it. And then if I didn't have access to anything, I would still add it to my reading list. But in this box, I just wrote myself a reminder that I needed to contact UEA Library and ask them either for an interlending loan or for them to buy a copy of the book or article that I wanted to read. And 9 times out of 10, they were able to do this for me, which was really fantastic. I also included the specific topic that reading was related to because my dissertation included lots of different subtopics. Once I'd then read each book or article on my reading list, I ticked it off and included a short summary of the reading, as well as utility grading from excellent to not useful, so that when I came to writing the dissertation, I could remember what was helpful and what wasn't. And then lastly, I included a box for extra comments and extra questions that arose from the readings as well. There are multiple ways you could split up the research and the writing components of your dissertation. You could decide to split your time halfway down the middle and use half of the year to research and then half to write. Or like me, you may decide to research and write consecutively as you go along. Personally, I found that having an idea about what I wanted to write about in each chapter really helped me to split up the research and the writing components of the dissertation. I eventually chose to research the Americanisation of British women in the post-war period, but through the lenses of film, TV and women's magazines. So whilst each chapter was connected under the umbrella of media or popular culture, they were actually quite distinct. So after giving myself a few weeks at the very start of the year to research about the more general aspects of Americanization and British women, I then chose to research for one chapter and then go on to write a first draft of that chapter straight after, and then to move on and repeat the process with the next. Personally, I feel if I'd have left all of the writing to the end and I hadn't have planned out my chapters, then I'd have got to the writing stage and panicked because I'd have had so much information and absolutely no idea what to do with it, as well as the prospect of having 10,000 words to write all in one go. Whereas researching and then writing consecutively helped to break down those 10,000 words into smaller, more manageable chunks. Once you've decided how you want to split the research and the writing components of the dissertation, I'd advise setting yourself some deadlines. And when you do so, make sure to give yourself some leeway. You may, for example, find a gem in an archive that you want to spend longer analysing, or it may get to the editing stage and you feel that you're going to run out of time. I set myself a deadline of finishing my dissertation 2 weeks before the official deadline, and I'm so glad that I did because actually the editing stage took so much longer than I'd anticipated. Making a physical checklist for each deadline helped to keep me motivated throughout my whole dissertation. I appreciate that summer for this year is almost over. If you do have a few weeks left, or if you're watching this video a few years down the line, then do just try to find 1 to 2 hours per week to try and put the steps I've outlined above into action over the summer. The year will go so much quicker than what you think it will, and when you have other deadlines approaching, it's really easy to push your dissertation to the sideline. And if you start collating resources earlier on, then you'll also have longer to request access to any readings if you need to. If, for example, you've read half of an article and it's not looking like it's going to be useful, then don't feel like you have to read all of the article, especially when you really start to get into the research of your project and the direction of your dissertation is really starting to take shape. I'd advise just keeping that reading on your reading list, but perhaps not going any further with it at that stage. It's also really important to realise that even if you're finding something really interesting, then it may not be useful for your end project, but that is okay. On my first trip to an archive, I found a lot of the material really interesting and I thought it was going to be really useful for my dissertation. But actually when my dissertation really started to take shape, I realised that that content wasn't going to be that useful and I ended up having to visit again. But don't let this make you feel as though you're moving backwards, because actually turning down dead ends is just all part of the process. I think that it's really important to understand and accept that your project is probably going to end up looking really different to what you imagined it looking like at the start of the process. And actually what you read, and especially the primary sources that you analyse, should direct your project. Most people won't have visited an archive before they start their dissertation, and personally I was completely clueless as to what information I needed to write down. So actually when it came to doing my footnotes a few weeks before the official dissertation deadline, I realised that I actually hadn't noted down enough of the essential information I needed, such as magazine issue numbers from the magazines that I'd analysed. And so I ended up having to go back to the archives for a third time just to collect this information. But to avoid having to do this, just take down as much information as you possibly can about whatever you're analysing, and also make sure to take photos as well if you're allowed to. There's obviously a lot of reading required for a dissertation, but don't stress too much about having to read whole books because you don't necessarily need to. I'd advise always reading the introduction and the conclusion, and then scanning the contents and seeing either what chapter or chapters could be really helpful to you. In a similar vein, you may not get through your whole reading list, but again, that's okay. As long as you feel you have enough contextual knowledge and you've analysed enough primary sources to be able to write your dissertation, then this is not a problem at all. If you felt lost before watching this video, I really hope it's given you an idea of where to start with your dissertation. It's undeniably such a huge project, but if you start early and you put the time and the effort in, then it can be really rewarding and enjoyable. If you have found this video helpful, then please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I would really love to know in the comments what subject area you're thinking of researching.